up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're gonna talk about the new ultimate that just dropped on the 2nd of June, which is the Dancing Mat ultimate. Otherwise also known as UMAT. I don't know why people came up with it called UMAT. But some people also call it DMU, whatever, right? Okay. So it's been out a while, and obviously I have managed to get it cleared via a very tough journey. That is a story for another day. If you want, you can !doc in my Twitch and get a hold of the novel that I spent a lot of time writing it up. After some serious, heated argument, which resulted in some hot makeout online. It's a good read, and let me know your feedback, regarding the document. But otherwise today we're gonna talk about the ultimate Dancing Mat. Before I go into the fight, maybe technicalities or maybe in-depth review on say phase and on mechanic, I want to talk about just overall this ultimate. So I think a lot of questions that people always ask is, how is this ultimate difficulty compared to the others? Now, full disclosure, I want to say it first. I don't think anybody should be comparing an ultimate difficulty to the previous ultimate at the current time. I think you should always be comparing ultimate to another ultimate during its on content time. Let's just say you want to compare Kefka to say UCorp. You should be comparing Kefka today in 7.5 versus UCorp in 4.1. You cannot be comparing Dancing Mat today and then UCorp today. It doesn't make sense, right? Because the game is very different. It's low level content, it's legacy ultimate, it's very different. These other ultimates are made at that time when the player's skill is at that level, and the developer thinks that the mechanic that they put out are mechanics that will challenge player during that time, right? Obviously today, things speed up. That's why our ultimate are getting harder, right? So yeah, when we want to compare ultimate, we compare to them when they were on patch, right? So how does Dancing Mat compare to the ultimate on patch? Ultimate is always difficult, but this ultimate is not the most difficult ultimate to proc on patch, on content, right? Either it's within the expansion or on the patch, right? This would be along the line of maybe U and T at best. I think the effort that you put in, the time that you put in to clear this ultimate versus say, U in 4.3 or T in 5.1, I think it's almost the same effort. It's almost the same difficulty for the skill that we have back then, the groups that we have back then, and the mechanics that we were exposed back then. So I think it's kind of the same feel. World first about 4 to 5 days, 6 days in this case, and then after that the other top 10 groups or outside the top 5 group is week 2, and then everybody else will be end of week 2, week 3. So I think Dancing Mat is about that difficulty. I think DSR on patch is way harder and demanding, way mentally demanding, physically demanding, and skill demanding compared to Kefka today, right? Same for top. I mean, dude, the very fact that they were able to make top and challenge the player base who just came out fresh from DSR, better static, players with better mental fortification, and then you got top crazy that they were able to keep it equally, without DSR, right? Top would actually be harder than DSR, but because of DSR, top turned out to be similar, world first about 7-8 days, and then after that, the rest of us, top 5 teams is 10 days, and then everybody else hardcore group, top 20 group is 2 weeks. So I do think there's no way Kefka is as hard as DSR and top during its time. So I think these two is still the hardest on patch. Dancing Mat is probably on the line of U and T. Now UCorp is very different. I don't want to bring UCorp into conversation because UCorp is the first time we get an ultimate. The entire community was shell-shocked how UCorp was as a content, as an endgame content. So this one is something that we can't really compare. This is just, holy fuck, man, we just got destroyed when this came out, right? Now, what about FRU? What about FRU? FRU is a joke. And I don't mean any disrespect to the devs that make FRU, but dude, FRU we've been saying for the longest time. FRU is the most Now, again, FRU is it an ultimate? Sure. Because at the end of the day, it is harder than the Savage, right? But when you compare it to the other ultimate, this is the weakest, easiest, most like mechanically least challenging ultimate, right? So if you compare Dancing Mat to Futures Rewritten, I think Dancing Mat is way harder than Futures Rewritten, not because Dancing Mat is a hard ultimate, but because this is an actual proper ultimate, and that this is not even remotely close to a normal ultimate. It's an ultimate, but it's a way too easy ultimate. So this is the problem, right? That's why a lot of people are struggling with Dancing Mat, because a lot of people in these past 2 to 3 years, your only real proc experience in an ultimate was FRU. How many people actually did DSR when it dropped? Not many people. I mean, a lot of people started doing ultimate because of, you know, how cinema is, you know, DSR on top, and people start to get interested in ultimate. That's why people started, you know, doing ultimate somewhere, but they didn't really proc on patch or on content release, right? For these two, they do it like, you know, when auto marker become a thing, they do it when, you know, stress become a thing, it become like PFable, then people start to do it. But no one, or rather not many people actually proc an ultimate on drop, like all these ultimate. That's why on drop, these two and, you know, UMAT is equally difficult. I don't think UMAT is harder than these two, right? But UMAT is definitely way harder than FRU. But that is because FRU is just way too easy. So a lot of people have very false sense of like accomplishment. And I'm not saying this like in a way, I'm not trying to shit hog you that, you know, you are an FRU progger. No, that's not what I meant. I mean like a lot of you guys' expectation were being altered because FRU make you feel that UMAT is just gonna be another one like FRU. You can do it. You can do it. And you can. I'm like you can. You can, right? But I think a lot of people were just like mental boom. A lot of people got tired, mentally stressed out, got tiring. How did this take more than 7 days? How did this take more than 10 days? How did this take more than 2 weeks? You know, it's because I think people don't realize that an actual ultimate would take you about 10 to 14 days. Even hardcore rating. You know? So if you're not even doing 14 days, 16 hours a day, this would usually, just like, you know, these two ultimate, which, you know, I compare them equally to UMAT, this would take people 3 to 4 weeks to clear also. You know, so Dancing Mat is most likely going to be there also. Most group is going to clear week 4 or at the end of this month, and PF will start like picking up and actually like really proc some P4 and, you know, start to actually see a lot more like general PF being put up to clear the fight. And, you know, obviously people joining and people, you know, obviously people ready. Yeah, so yeah, FRU was bad. FRU make people feel bad about themselves because, you know, they now lose confidence. They thought they were able to do it, but now they thought they couldn't. And now after they do, they hate themselves because it's miserable. But the reality is, Dancing Mat is just another normal ultimate. It's not even DSR and top level. So that is where I think the difficulty of this ultimate is, okay? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the production value of this ultimate. Now, I think every single ultimate have this like holy awesome spectacle, right? Dancing Mat seems to not have a lot of those, right? And even music is like FF6 battle music, you know, Statue of the Gods music, God Kefka music, FF6 music, and then after that just, you know, the orchestra version of Dancing Mat, right? So also there isn't like very nice, like very awesome cinematic, although I do think that the intermission was really good, right? I think a lot of people like the intermission, or rather the transition, the cutscene, but overall it does feel like they could have done a lot more visually or even musically, right? But they didn't. You know, so I do think that is definitely one of the things that probably falls short compared to the other ultimate. But at the same time, I don't think it's a bad thing, because for the first time the developer decided to break the pattern, right? You know, like these are like raid, story, raid, story, raid, you know? Like all the ultimate has a specific theme, right? It's either story, EX12 related, or it's raid related, right? You know, the developer felt spontaneous, and then, you know, they were like, okay, let me do a Kefka ultimate, and he just yoinked Kefka out, and then somehow he was able to make an 18-minute fight, 5-phase fight, and then it's a good ultimate. So maybe the production isn't there because maybe that was not their focus. I do give them credit to break the pattern, right? Break the pattern. And at the same time, maybe the production cost for this is not as high, but at least you know that they still have the creativity and the development power to make a good ultimate, a challenging, a normal, a fun ultimate, you know? So 1 + 1 - 1, I do think that overall, if you ask me, any time of the day, I would rather take an ultimate like this And if this means that they need to use less money or less development power on the cinematic side or the visual side, but make good technical fights, mechanically challenging fight, I would take ultimate like this any day. And then, you know, maybe hoping maybe one day they will be able to allocate resource properly, and then maybe one day we will have 3 ultimate in the next expansion. I mean, I don't know, hoping, right? But it's nice to see that they break the norm and they deliver. Yeah, they delivered. Like, even though they are short, there are things that, you know, people maybe didn't like or people expect more, but overall, you know, Kefka Dancing Mat is a very good ultimate alongside, like, you know, on content, Uwu and T. You know, not so much, again, before I sign off this portion, not so much like DSR and top, but honestly speaking, man, after what I personally went through proc, thank God it's not a DSR and top. Bro, I will be trapped. I will be hostage. You know, so I do appreciate that this is not on the higher end of ultimate on content, and this is more like a median expectation for an ultimate, and this is cool. I think this is okay. Like, I think this is the perfect level of what an ultimate should be. If they give me another DSR on top, I wouldn't complain, obviously, but I think if they continue to make ultimate at this level, I think it's perfect. You know, 7-day Wolfers, less than 7-day Wolfers, but hopefully more than 5 days Wolfers, you know, which it happened this time. And then the rest of us, you know, 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, I think it's okay. Yeah. So that wraps up the portion of overall this ultimate difficulty and how it compare and feel versus the others. Okay, so next I want to go into the phases. So I'm gonna use my clear video to, I just gonna like go through some of the phases, right, and talk about each phase, right? So okay, phase 1. I do think that this phase 1 is one of the best phase 1 they ever put out in a while, because this phase 1 served many purposes, right? Number 1, they put a puzzle in phase 1, which is crazy if you ask me. But at the same time, I also think that it makes it very accessible. Like, this is what we always do when we were, say, blind progging in Ultimate. What we usually do is we get as much information as possible until we get capped by the puzzle. Then we go back to solve the puzzle. Because at the same time, we are already versed in the phases, you know, during or before or after the puzzle phase. And then we just have to focus on figuring out the puzzle, and then we can, you know, progress to the fight. So they put the puzzle this time in phase 1. It's very interesting because you don't have to figure out the puzzle immediately, because there's just simply no reason to. So if you just want to like information gather the fight, you want to go as deep as the fight as possible, you can actually just do the fight without puzzle, drop the confetti, don't play games with him, and just, you know, do the usual, you know, maybe savage EX level type of mechanical solving, and then just get past phase 1 and get it done, right? So either way, you can do some sort of simultaneous progress, or you can do information gathering. But then at the same time, they put it in phase 1, means that if you really want to solve it and you don't want to like wonder where it is, you can immediately get back in. And it wouldn't take you like 10 minutes before you can try a theory for a puzzle, right? Right off the pool, you can immediately try theories for puzzle. I think it's a good place to put a puzzle, and it makes phase 1 interesting, and it makes a lot of people able to feel like we can do progression, even though it's wrong way to do it, but at the same time we feel that we are progressing, you know, which I will talk about phase 2 later because of this, right? So phase 1 I think is really fun. I think phase 1 is, it's not like Looper mind numbing. I mean, now I think many people would rather do Looper than do this phase 1, because this phase 1 is actually, I wouldn't say easy, but this phase 1 with the puzzle is actually like, you know, a very nice phase 1 ultimate introduction. So I do think that, you know, putting the puzzle here was perfect. Yeah, and the puzzle was fun. It wasn't that difficult to figure out also. It's phase 1. They just want to make it fun. They just want to let you have the feel of, you know, whether you are clearing the fight or not, this is the first thing you're going to do, right? So even like if you're PFing, you are casual, you are a new ultimate raider, you feel that you get that ultimate experience. You know, phase 1 immediately solve puzzle, do puzzle mechanic. Right now, perfect timing. I want to stop right here, because if there is one thing in phase 1 that is really, really bad, and I think the developers should consider in the future whether they want to do a mechanic like this, is this mechanic right here, Raven Tree, this arrow. This arrow is very, very, very janky. Now, this is a very creative mechanic, but sadly, because of the game's netcode or positioning update, it sadly doesn't work, okay? So you wonder, for people who are PFing, you know already, we do this calling the freaky box. Actually, I don't know whether JP deployed this. I actually don't know what JP strat used, but at least in NA, we use the freaky box. So we would put the arrow like in line. But what we do is, we will put the odd one, or rather the one in the cardinal, we will put it nearer in. Now, why do we do that? Because so that if we stand here and we walk in and we teleport, now the game should be teleporting us in the middle. So that when we line up perfectly, we will be teleporting to the next one to the middle, the next one to the middle, and then the next one to the middle. This is what the mechanic was meant to be designed. The developer wanted us to do that. But because of the game's net coding, and because of this game's positional update, even when you look at our character walking here, right? The game registers us enter the portal here. So this is why we PF in NA, we do the, the slightly, slightly shifted offset marker, so that when the server tick teleport us at the start of the marker, we will be teleporting here. And then here it will naturally bring us to the correct spot. If you put them normally, if you put this normally, and your character walk in, you're gonna get teleport here, you're gonna get teleport here, and then you might be teleport here, and then you are not even gonna reach the next one. It's very, very wonky. I'm pretty sure the developers have watched stream. I'm pretty sure you guys have watched a lot of clips. In fact, I'm gonna bring out one clip to show you how bad it can be. This is what some people with hyping are experiencing. Look at this. You see how they snapshot this person? This person already walked past. The moment you touch it, the game should just register you in the middle and teleport you straight. But this game, because of the positional update and server tick and latency, now this person walked through the whole puddle and the game snapped her over here. Which means that now she's going to be teleported over here. And now it doesn't work. Like, they placed the puddle properly. This person did the mechanic correctly. But because of server tick and positional update that this game struggled with, now you got this situation. Yeah, I don't think this is a bug, and I don't know how they're gonna solve it. This is just sadly how the game is coded. And my message to the developers, if next time you want to do a mechanic like this, somehow find a way to make it work. I don't know how. Maybe find another way to make this mechanic work. It is the same for your positional update for this game, by the way. So right here, this is your hitbox, right? Your hitbox is in the middle of this circle. Okay, so if you're standing still, this is where you are. Now, for people who use add-on like Pixel Perfect, you will know what I'm talking about. You know exactly where you are, right? But the thing is, in this game, right, the moment you move, your character is no longer at this spot where I'm putting. Let's just say if I draw a dot, okay, right here, right? Let's just say this is my position, right? When I stand still. But when you move, right? This is not your position anymore. The game don't register your position like that. What the game does, right? So like when you actually move, right? Your character is no longer here. Your character is always... there is a phantom behind you that is where your actual position is. When you're doing a mechanic like this, right? Because of how your character walk, you would think that you are here. Bang! You are actually here. That's why it teleports you like that. That's why it snaps you here. Because you are still walking. NAPM managed to find a way to overcome it, the freaky arrows. Thank God for the freaky arrows. Let me tell you, if there's no freaky arrows and we have to do it the way normally, and then we are at the mercy of server tick and net coding, holy fuck, man. Going through this mechanic and then progress the fight and do Forsaken 2 is going to be such a nightmare. This mechanic being janky is a big problem that contributes to mental boom in phase 2. Because what comes after this mechanic? It is Forsaken. And we will go into that, like right now. So, okay, now, we go into phase 2. Rather than saying that we are in phase 2, let's just say this whole phase is just about Forsaken. This God Kefka phase is nothing except for Forsaken. This mechanic might be the most, I wouldn't say the hardest, but it might be the most mental stress, tiring phase or mechanic they ever done in an ultimate. This mechanic is most easily relatable to Hollow World in top, right? Like, you know, in Hollow World in top it's the same thing, right? But Hollow World in top allows you to use the whole arena, right? Deformation, blue is deformation, break this, break that. Blue is deformation, break this, break that, blah blah, right? You do it 4 times, right? You do it 3 times the same way, and then you do the 4th time a different way where everybody's set to resolve the whole, you know, to debug the whole thing, right? So that one allows you to use the entire map, and that one is very slow, and that one is very repetitive, and that one got literally no room for error. Like, it is impossible to fuck up unless you forget blue is deformation or red is deformation, right? Now, Forsaken is completely different. Forsaken gives you way too little time, and they throw different debuffs, and they give you limited space. You don't use the whole arena anymore. You are only able to use this part of the arena, this one small portion, to do this mechanic. You have to be very specific, 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 and then you have to be very, very specific. Like, this is an 8-man very specific. Now, luckily not pixel perfect requirement, positioning requirement for this. You have a little bit of wiggle room. You have, like, you know, this space to move, you have like this space to move, you have like maybe this space to move, you have like this space to move, you have like this space to move, you have like, you know, this space to move, you know, like that is space. But the thing is, it's still confined in a very small area. So you require 8-man to do very specific movement or positioning to be able to solve this mechanic. Now that alone, right, is already kind of difficult already. Now imagine you have to do 2 patterns, and then you have to bait, and then you have to kick that even restrict the arena, even make this space even tighter, you know? And then you have to do it 4 sets of 2 patterns. You have to do it a total of 8 times. Now, I have done every ultimate on content, and I said there's a lot of ultimate mechanics that is, you know, ultimate mechanics, but this might be the most tiring, mental draining. Every single pattern you do, your heart skip a bit. Not because you are not in the right spot. You are in the right spot, but you are like, every time the tower lands, your heart skip a bit like, did anybody die? Did we succeed? And then even when you succeed, okay, next. You have to do that 8 times. Now, even now you cleared and you do it, even I myself have that feeling, you know? Imagine when you are progging a phase 2. A phase 2 mechanic. Just less than 5-6 minutes into the fight, you have to do this mechanic. I think it's a little bit ridiculous. I think they overdone this mechanic. The fact that you have to do it 4 times 2 times is crazy to me. I feel that if they do it, say 3 times 2, or they even do it 2 times 2, I honestly think, like if they were to do this, I personally think it would have been still okay. This is just a little bit crazy to me. How they do this phase, right? Is this phase is 80% Forsaken and then 20% Shrine, right? So I kind of feel like the balance of this phase is a little bit lopsided. You know, like literally this whole phase is doing this, you know, and then they give you a Shrine that is like literally savage difficulty mechanic. I don't even think the Shrine is like an ultimate mechanic, right? So for them to do a crazy ultimate mechanic like Forsaken and takes over 80% of the phase, and then you just do a simple mechanic at the end, like a victory lap, and then it's not even savage difficulty. I kind of feel like maybe they should have just made Forsaken say 60% of the phase, and then maybe they do the Shrine that they do, right? And then maybe they do another Shrine, you know, that is like different from this Shrine, and then make it like, okay, this phase you do 3 sets of Forsaken and then you do 2 sets of Shrine, right? Then I think maybe this phase will feel more balanced and wouldn't feel so crazy, because dude, the Forsaken is definitely one of the, if not the biggest war of people being motivated to do the fight, clear the fight, and be consistently getting reps to do P3, P4, P5. Like Forsaken is a game. 100% Forsaken is a game. Forsaken is probably also going to be the phase that people spend the most time progging. I don't think you will spend much time progging P3 or P4 or P5. I don't think you need like 100 pulls in P2 to do Forsaken versus say most likely 10 pulls, 15 pulls, you clear P5. Most likely 15, 20 pulls of P4, you clear P4. Most likely maybe 50 pulls of P3, you clear P3. But Forsaken, this shit, is gonna be the most amount of pulls in your proc. Right? This is the real grind. Okay? So honestly, there's nothing much to say about this phase. This whole phase is really just Forsaken too. Forsaken, right? But this is a very crazy mechanic. Like, I would say that this is the ultimate mechanic. You know, so it's kind of crazy that after what we saw in Kefka, after what you see in Savage, you know, for them to actually make a Forsaken this crazy and really torture you and make sure that you, like, bro, there's no luck. There's no chance. There is no I got lucky. There is no did you see me do one set right. No. This is a mechanic that is all or nothing. Either you completely master this phase or you keep grinding this phase until all 8 of you do. There is no luck involved. There is no I got past this phase luckily. There is no did you see that? Did you see what I did and we got past anyway? Oh, we can clear it without. No. This phase requires 100% perfection. Yeah, I do think that they went too far. But at the same time, it's an ultimate. This is, you know, I expected this, but I also did not expect. I wanted this, but I didn't expect this. And after doing it, I feel that even if I want it, I do feel like it's ridiculous. So, you know, hopefully next time they maybe balance it out a little bit. But if they want to do this again next time, go ahead. Great, it's an ultimate. We should be tortured because it's an ultimate. And then after that, you get to try. Now, this is sadly the disappointing part. Because this trine... Now, I don't know whether they can do more, right? But, you know, we do have the big trine pattern in Savage. So maybe they could have done something different also. Maybe they can also do a past future kick here. But, you know, for them to just, like, do this... You know, just a trine, go into the safe spot, funny a bit... I kind of feel like it's a little bit underwhelming, right? Maybe they could have done one more. Maybe they could have done something different. I don't know. But now to go back to phase 1 when we talk about the puzzle. Remember when I said having the puzzle means that you can skip the puzzle until the part that you need the puzzle before you can progress. They actually make the checkpoint or the gate actually very early into the fight. They make the gate 6 minutes into the fight. 6-7 minutes into the fight. Oh, you see what I did there? They make a 6-7 minutes gate into the fight so that if you don't do the puzzle, this is the part where the fight ends. And I cannot believe they actually did that to throw us. Like, I thought that was really fucking funny. Like, you know what I think they should have done? They should have let us beat, and then when we open the box, we should get a glamour that is the weapon, except it doesn't glow. So you would just be the red weapon, and it would just be a dull color, like a gray color weapon, and it's like, yeah, it's a fake. You know what I mean? And then I thought it would be really funny. And then on top of that, give us a title, right? Make it for fun, right? Make it like Law Legend, Lemao Legend, a Scarf Legend or something. You know, I thought that would be really funny. I mean, they already go their way to make fake ending already, right? So why don't they, you know, go an extra mile to give you some more trolls, right? So, you know, hopefully next time they will do that. But I thought it was really funny that they actually make a fake ending here, you know? And at the same time, now that we saw it, we cannot proceed to the fight. Now we have to do the puzzle. So, you know, so I do think that the pacing is really nice. Put puzzle in phase 1, make the gate early into the fight 6 minutes in, and then immediately make you go back to reprop or do the puzzle. So I do think the phase 1, phase 2, the interaction was really, really good. Yeah. Okay. Now, we talk about phase 3. In my opinion, P3 is the phase for this ultimate. Yes, Forsaken was the mechanic that you're gonna spend the most time progging, but this P3 is the phase that you know whether you can clear the fight. Whether you can clear the fight or not depends on how consistent and how much pulls you can get in P3. How much black holes you can get. The more you can get, or even if you don't do it clean, even you have a lot of deaths, even if you fuck up a lot, it's completely fine. Because at the end of the day, if you are perfect in P3, you are gonna clear the fight. P3 is the gate for you to get your title and your weapon. Okay? Why? Later I will talk about phase 4 and phase 5. But phase 3 is a 5-minute phase, and the black hole is a not difficult mechanic, but things go wrong very fast. Unlike Savage or EX Trial, right? There's no recovery, right? But before we get there, let's talk about the beginning first. The Bowels of Agony, or rather we call it the Elemental mechanic. Now, for people who were progging this on the first few days, this mechanic is not easy. Having to learn how to do the water knockback, or oh shit. Or fire donut knockback to try to get the timing, the distance, the mitigation, and then the tank movement, and then 8 players moving properly, and then do the head tail win. This phase for the beginning of a phase 3 is actually not easy. You know, like a lot of us struggle with figuring out, like, you know, how do we get the positioning right? How do we know where to put this? What is the distance not to get hit by the thunder? And then yada yada movement and stuff. How do people bait wind? What is the... Even though when you're doing wind, right? I mean, this is the wind, right? Where do you stand? Where do you put the people? You know, and then if you are the fire, let's just say this is the fire, right? How do we put people? How is the donut gonna be? How are these 2 people gonna stand to get knocked back? Blah blah blah. This phase is actually was supposed to be very technical, but sadly, you can skip this with tank LB. So I don't think they will ever fix it. I don't think they will ever acknowledge it as like a exploit or a bug. It's just sadly one of those things that the developer maybe overlooked. You know, I feel that they maybe should have some fail-safe, right? If this fire donut didn't hit this, if the fire donut times 2 didn't at least hit 1 person, then something should have happened, right? If the water AoE didn't at least hit 1 or 2 person to knock them back, then maybe the water would just explode. You know, maybe they should have done some fail-safe, right? Like, you know, they didn't do fail-safe for the Hand of Pain in T phase 1, that's why people can zerg it. They didn't do Royal Pentacle net coding fixing issue, that's why people can jump through 2 Pentacle and then, you know, explode and, you know, do the fight. Like, there's a lot of cheese in this game, right? Magic number in top P6. The fact that the magic number debuff didn't persist on dead people, that's why people can use the no healer strat. Like, these are oversights, right? But also, these are things that they won't fix. So hopefully in the future, when they do another mechanic like this, they test properly. But it is what it is. Now it's all about the LB strat, right? Which makes this phase literally a dungeon mechanic. Like, you see, we don't even need to do any mechanic. We completely skip it. There's no knockback, we just wait. Right, we just wait, there's nothing. It's literally doing nothing until the hit tail win. Right? So what the tank LB strat is that, you know, after you get knocked back, you tank LB, and then every hit tail win that finish, a win will come out from the winner. So in this case, because all 8 disappear at the same time, you get all 8. But those are meant to be shared by a buddy. But now because of tank LB, you can just double share it. Like, you see, we are doing a 4-pair share here. PF is doing an 8-man stack. So this tells you how powerful the tank LB strat is. Now, I do think that 8-man stack is pretty scary though, because you probably need a lot of mitigation still, right? But you see, if you look at 2-man stack, we just tank LB alone is already like almost 1/3 of the health. So if you guys are doing 8-man stack, obviously I think you guys need to spend more min. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, tank LB above, whatever, right? Yeah, so sadly this first half is being cheesable because of the tank LB. So hopefully the developer next time think about a more fail-safe way so people don't cheese mechanic in an ultimate fight, you know, but it is what it is. Now the real P3 begin. Right? The P3 should have begun with the start of P3, but sadly because of the tank LB, now the real P3 begin, right? So this part, the black hole part, is actually, in my opinion, the most fun part. Now, is it as hard or harder than Forsaken? Maybe yes, maybe no, but at least it's fun because it's not repetitive. It's not like you have to do the same shit 8 times. So like Forsaken is a grind, but Forsaken is just fun a little bit, but it's about the grind. And then Black Hole is just, the whole phase was just fun, you know? And it's not punishing, like, one thing explode is over. You can actually still progress the fight. You know, you can still actually like see one more pattern. But I guess Forsaken letting you see one more pattern also doesn't make a difference, right? It's the same shit, right? It's just repeating times 4 sets. You know, so yeah, I love this phase. I think this phase was really, really fun. I say that as a DPS. This phase might be the most miserable phase as a healer. So if you are a healer, I salute you. I think any healer that clear this ultimate should deserve 2 tokens. I think the amount of effort that healers have to specifically put into this fight versus the other the other classes, I think healers should get 2 tokens. You know, healers are being abused in this phase. You know, people don't give healer enough appreciation for this phase. This phase is insane. But this phase is also Yoshi P taking you guys not thinking healing is hard enough very personally and seriously. I don't know whether this phase can ever be done without healer. I would love to see a video of that, you know, when the Chinese player when, you know, those optimizers, those fun run people want to try. I would love to see how they can do this phase without healer. But yeah, this is Square Enix, this is Yoshi P, this is the dev team taking very personally that you guys say there's nothing to heal. Yoshi P said before, oh, if you got nothing to heal, go and heal an ultimate. And then people still do ultimate without healer, and Yoshi P is like, okay, you know what? Challenge accepted. This is the phase that you gotta heal. There's nothing for you to do here except healing. So yeah, this is a very healing demanding fight. If your healer cannot manage this, you are not gonna clear the fight. You might have to think about replacing. You might have to think about getting better healers in your group to come and fill it. I don't know. But this is why I say, if your group can go through this phase, you have what it takes to clear the fight. Because trust me, the remaining of the fight is a lot easier and less demanding than spot healing this and then do all these mechanics at the same time. And then at the same time, you know, do DPS. Yeah. So I think this phase was brilliant. Now, obviously, the one thing, just like the teleporter at the beginning, and one of the big no-nos that we don't really like in mechanic is tether grabbing. But luckily, this tether grabbing didn't turn out to be like the main pain point. You know what I mean? It's about not running into black holes. It's about doing the Kefka mechanics, doing your latitude, longitude, and your edict properly, right? So, black hole, tethers are always wonky, but in this case, it didn't turn out to be like, you know, a problem. So I think it's okay. Yeah, this phase is really fun. I like this phase. Yeah. Tanks also get absolutely destroyed here, man. Yeah, like positioning X-Dev, how they do the tank buster in this phase, proximity base. I thought this phase was very, very well done. Yeah. But, this is the best phase of the fight. Yeah. Most enjoyable part. This is, to me, the make or break or prop. You do this, you clear the fight. You can't do this, you gotta get it done. Once you get it done, you clear the fight. Once you get this done consistently, it's a matter of time you clear. Yeah. So that is just the P. Yeah. It's just black hole times 3, right? But yeah, overall the sequence is pretty fun. Okay. Now we go into P4. This P4 is gonna be a very contradicting one. Because this P4 is just stand still and let things resolve. If you know what this is a debuff vomit phase, and once you figure it out, it just stand still and let things resolve. It's fun. Overall, this is not really like a mechanically challenging phase. This is just like a intermission type of thing, you know, which in a way, to me, kind of like it didn't peak well. You know, like the other ultimate is like you always start, and then you peak, and then it's finale. It's always cinematic. It's always like a lot on stake, right? But this intermission is the point where, you know, you go through Forsaken, you go through Forsaken, and then you do Black Hole, and then suddenly when you get to this phase, it's like, you know, like this is P4, right? So I kind of feel like maybe the momentum didn't carry through in this phase. It acts like a breather, yes, it acts like an intermission. It's all just about understand your debuff, click a few macro, know where to stand, and then movement is very basic, right? Stand here, move or don't move, streak, look in, look out, and then after that donut or twister, and then repeat. So like this phase is not very mechanically skill demanding. It's literally just, you know, press your macro, read your echo, right? So, and then obviously, you know, stand here, or stand here, right? So I do think that this phase is, it's a breather, it's an intermission. At this point, I think it does feel a little bit like, okay, even though it's easy, but, you know, getting through here, getting Forsaken done, getting Black Hole done, to get here, wiping here is like a type of feeling, right? But overall, this phase by itself, I think it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. Now, the thing that I'm scared the most, now we haven't get there yet, and I don't know whether we will ever get there, and I don't know whether this can be done or programmed. I am afraid that this thing will eventually, like, okay, like you see all these things? These are all the things that you need to look at. These are the debuffs, right? I am afraid that one day this will all be auto-mark. I don't know whether PF will actually do it. I don't know whether the developers know about the tool called auto-marker. If they want to know about it, I'm not going to talk about it. Maybe if they really want to know about it, they can go figure it out. But I fear that this type of mechanic will encourage third-party usage. You know, now does it need to? I don't think so, right? You just have to make you just have to make macro, right? You just have to make echo macro, right? But the thing is, these are the type of mechanic that encourages add-on, that encourages auto-mark. You know, so I hope that it will not get there. I don't think it's needed, and I hope that it doesn't get there. But that is the only one thing that I'm afraid that this phase will eventually just be trivialized, even further trivialized because of auto marker. I hope not. I hope not. But you know, this is what this phase overall is just what it's gonna be. Read debuff, stand still, let things resolve. I'm still time. Yeah, this phase is just like that. Healing in this phase is also easier because it's just a mid-shit, very obvious timing where damage comes in. There's no variant, and it doesn't require like super crazy. One less mid equal you die type of thing, and it's not like you have to plan it perfectly because you know the timeline suggests that you must have everything used perfectly. No, that's P5, that's last phase, right? So this phase, you just make sure that people are top. You just have a couple of mitigation, boom, boom, boom. This phase, easy, no fuss, no fuss. Yeah, very easy to less than 15-20 pulls you get here, you'll be fine. Yeah. Okay, now the last phase. I understand that last phase is meant to be a victory lap. I understand that last phase is meant to be not mechanical challenging but rather a nerf check. But the problem is, in order for you to have a nerf check, you need to be holding on to your nerves up to this point. Which is why I say this intermission phase kind of break the momentum. Like the moment you get to the point that you're so comfortable at P4, right? P4 really just, yay. Guys, let's just focus on P5, you know, sweat's gone. We go through the hard part, let's just relax, and then we get P5 done. So I kind of feel like for a P5 to be designed the way it was designed eventually, knowing how the whole P5 turned out, it didn't feel like you're gonna get the shakies. It didn't feel like a lot was at stake. The 2 minutes of P4 intermission take it all away already. So this phase just turned out to be, it's an easy phase. And the mechanics are easy. And the momentum is just gone. Like, the adrenaline is just like gone, right? So now obviously there's still shakies, right? But it's not as crazy as say top shaky was real, man. DSR shaky was real. Even though DSR, I would say DSR last phase is easier than this, right? But this is the easiest to pull. This is the easiest to learn. And I think most group will not take more than 10 pulls to figure out and learn this phase. Very easy to understand also, you know. DPS check is almost non-existent here also. This mechanic initially I thought would be really difficult, and then it turned out that even for me at high ping, bro, if you want to do the turn left or turn right, it's so easy. Like, dude, I didn't even bother learning it. I just run through. I got 180 ping, by the way. I just run through. So it's like this mechanic wasn't even like nerve-wracking to me, you know? I'm just like, I just hold up to you. Done, you know? And then after that, this tower, okay, this tower that it does is room for error, right? But at the same time, it's not that bad, right? Again, a couple of pulls, you immediately know how this works already, right? Very slow also, they give you so much time, in and out. Damage is not crazy also, you know what I mean? Yeah, and after that you get a 2 minute, and then after that you do normal mechanic again. Then you get the only mechanic that I would say might make you struggle is the classic extra flare. This one, right? Now, this one took me about 6 pulls to perfect it. Very easy to understand, but you still need reps to, you know, fully get the hang of, like, number 1, the snapshot, and number 2, actually where the visual will be. It's a circle. Circle and circle, sometimes it's very difficult to tell, like, exactly its trajectory, right? Like this one, now, luckily we are using the Graven tree marker, so we can just like, okay, this one, you know A and B is the lane. You know that 1 and 3 is the lane. You know that B and C is the lane. You know that A and D is the lane. You know that 2 and 4 is the lane. You know that B and C is the lane. Like, our marker is good. So after I figure it out, it was very easy for me, right? I'm just like, okay, I know that this one is just, you know, 1 and 3 lane safe. I just stand in lane, and then I know it's 2 and 4 lane state. I just stand in the middle of the arena, right? Yeah, then after that, I just turn, okay, this one is the B lane, B, C lane safe or AB lane safe. In this case, I went to the AB lane, right? And then after that, I look at this, I'm like, okay, this is also easy. This is also the BC lane. I can just go down, which I did. I'm pretty sure I did, yeah. But at this point, I'm just like, yup, I can play safe already. Right, this one is the AB lane safe, right? I'm in the AB lane and I know I can play safe already. I can technically go to the on top, but I didn't bother because I'm a Viper and there's no DPS check in this fight anyway. So eventually, once you figure out it's okay, now, if they let you do this extra flare 3 times, I think it will be nerve-wracking. But because they only let you do once, it's like, guys, I just have to get it right once. I don't even have to do it perfectly times 3. All I gotta do, all everybody gotta do is just to perfect it once. And the moment you don't see a damage down, you knew it was a clear. There's nothing ahead of you already. There's nothing challenging already. There's no more nerve check already. None of these mechanics require like Forsaken type of very specific pixel movement. You got so much time. Look how much time they give you. You know what I mean? Like, this last phase felt too generous. To the point that it's too relaxing. Coming back of a P4 is too relaxing. You know? And then when you get a key mechanic, you only do it once. So I kind of feel like, you know, it's a bummer that this last phase might be the easiest to proc last phase. You know, especially given how the whole fight ended after P3 Black Hole, right? You know, so I do think that, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's cool. I think overall this is a good ultimate. But the fact that this ultimate could have been so much better and so much harder kind of sent a chill down my spine. You know, like they can actually do something crazier. This is after NLB P3, an easy P4, and an easy P5. And this still turned out to be, in my books, an ultimate that is comparable to Uwu and T on patch in 4.3 and 5.1. If next time they put out ultimate like that, obviously we still gonna have things to nitpick. Obviously we still got good things and bad things to say about the fight. But if they can consistently put out ultimate at this difficulty, at this production level, and they can cook more of this and not FRU, I am okay with it. So overall, this ultimate. Now, if DSR is equal 10 out of 10, and if top is equal to 9 out of 10, I think UMAT is a very good 8 out of 10. I think it's good. Good ultimate. Not too hard, not too crazy. Kind of manageable. Eventually PFable. I think it's okay. Overall, no complaints. Good job, Square Enix. I have no more faith, man. When Dawn Trail became like that, I had no more faith, man. When our reward structure is still shit, I have no more faith when we have an FRU as an ultimate. And then going into 7.5, merely 6-7 months. Ooh. Merely 6-7 months before the expansion, and then we have an ultimate. I had no faith. But now seeing that the developer are able to cook with limited time, limited production cost, limited development time, limited resource, and you know, this whole expansion, they talk about how they have cost issue. That's why no more Blue Mage update, no normal mode Fog Tower, blah blah blah, and they still be able to make out this ultimate. Good job. Good ultimate. Yeah, but hey guys, this is just me. This is just how I feel about the ultimate. What about you? I want to hear from you. How do you guys feel about this ultimate? Are you still progging? Do you think that things that I say is fair? Do you have anything to add? Why don't you go to the comment section below and let me know what you think. Otherwise, drop a channel, a subscribe, like, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Have a good day, have a good night. Good luck on your prog. I will see you in the next one. Bye. But we are going to 8.0 and it's going to be fun. We are going to 8.0, things are going to change. I don't see how they're going to dial back mechanics, because if you look at Kefka, right? Oh shit, I forgot to mention this in the video. If you look at Kefka, right? Kefka was clearly made for Evolve mode. Kefka is not a Reborn mode fight. Kefka is an Evolve mode fight. It's very, very obvious how they don't give a fuck about your 2 minutes meta, how they don't give a fuck about how you optimize your rotation, how they don't give a shit about how much gauge you have. Kefka is a freestyle Evolve mode fight. So like, looking at Kefka and looking forward, right? I do think that I do think that we have exciting times ahead, and we're gonna be playing a brand new game with 21, potentially 25, 23 complete new jobs, new way to play. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be great, man. I think Everco is gonna go hard. He's gonna go crazy. I'm actually super excited.